Doom: The Dark Ages. This medieval masterpiece has once again shown the industry what a true FPS should look like, and more importantly, play like. With its uncomparative combat and incredible enemy AI, id Software have once again elevated the entire FPS genre they invented. Not to mention the beautiful and otherworldly level designs, engulfing every inch of your very being within these hellish vistas, each bursting at the seams with hidden details and intriguing lore. And it's those hidden secrets that I have returned today, because much like I did with Doom Eternal and the Ancient Gods DLC, in where I discovered all 200 plus Easter eggs and hidden references within the game, I have once again spent months relentlessly scouring through every crack, every crevice, every unholy pixel of this industry-shaking title to present to you all every single hidden Easter egg and hidden reference within Doom: The Dark Ages. But with that being said, if you wish to see all of Eternal's Easter eggs and hidden references for yourself, I will leave links to said videos down in the description below, along with timestamps for each and every Easter egg shown within this video. Although I'd be remiss not to give proper thanks where it is due. So with that being said, I'd like to give a massive thank you to id Software's own Emerson Tung for helping me clarify some of the more obscure references shown within the game, especially when it comes to the many developer portraits hidden within, in which I never would have known by myself. So thank you. But before I begin with Dark Ages, there's one Eternal reference that I embarrassingly missed, and while I have the opportunity today, I'd like to rectify that now. So within Doom Eternal's main menu screen, you'll hear a whistling melody playing in the background. As it just so happens, this main menu theme is actually a loving reference to Doom 2's opening to Hell track, composed by Bobby Prince. An incredible reference to one of the industry's most beloved composers. And with that out of the way, let us begin ripping and tearing throughout Doom: The Dark Ages. Starting off, we are introduced to the world of Dark Ages with this harrowing opening cutscene as we witness the demonic invasion descend upon the village of Kalim. This is where our first reference appears, as this very cutscene was influenced and inspired by the many films of director Tony Scott. As game director Hugo Martin explains that films like Days of Thunder, Top Gun, and even Rudy Harrington's 1989 classic film Roadhouse were a direct influence on the action-packed storytelling of Doom: The Dark Ages cinematics. Speaking of cinematics, during the first few levels of the game, you'll notice that under the maker's control, the Slayer appears with bright, golden, furious eyes, whilst unnerving yet dominant. This is actually a subtle Easter egg and reference to the classic Doom games, more specifically a reference to the cheat code IDDQD, which unlocks the game's God mode, and whilst in this mode, the Slayer will appear with piercing golden eyes. Moving on, in the early stages of the village of Kalim, you'll approach a burning tavern, mutilated and defaced, scattered with the remains of sentinel body parts, engulfed by hellfire. Although one item remains unscathed, because if we look towards the back of the tavern, we'll see hanging upon the wall a giant portrait of a man enjoying some fine wine from a Norse horn of sorts. This portrait just so happens to be one of id Software's lead environmental artists, Kevin Dunlop. Just like previous Doom entries, Easter eggs immortalizing id Software staff can be found throughout Doom: The Dark Ages, much like our next Easter egg, because if we turn around and exit the burning tavern, you'll find some very intriguing wanted posters. Starting off, we see a man with long hair and a beard to match. This just so happens happens to be game director Hugo Martin. Much like the Easter eggs found in Doom 2016 and Eternal with the famous Goulami's restaurant and pizzeria, Hugo Martin's face has returned to the world here in Dark Ages. Although that's not all, as accompanying him resides another wanted poster of another man with a monocule. This portrait is actually none other than id Software's cinematic supervisor Colin James. As well as this, within the same area, you'll find a third wanted poster of a man with long hair and a braided beard to match. This wanted man just so happens to be Lear Darakacy, id Software's own development director. Another detail can be found in the opening moments of the level, hidden besides this stairway, surrounded by sentinel soldiers, as if we look closer we'll find yet another wanted poster, this time portraying that of executive producer Marty Stratton. Lastly, in the latter half of the level, you'll come across this arena where you'll be forced to rip and tear throughout these demonic cretins. But if you approach this lone archway, you'll find a, how to say this, interesting looking fellow plastered upon another wanted poster. This is in fact a very creative portrait of character concept artist William Bow. Again, much like Doom's past, I love how id Software immortalized their dev teams within their games. I can think of no higher honor. Speaking of honoring Doom's past, our next reference can be found within the game's settings, as if we go over to the UI settings and under the HUD section, you'll find face avatar style. The settings are as followed: normal or classic. This feature is of course a loving homage to the classic Doom game's face avatar, and if you choose the classic mode, the original asset will appear and react much like it does within the original Doom games. Even later on during the zombie section of the game, the Slayer's sprite will also reflect that of the Slayer's undead counterpart, an amazing reference to Doom's legacy. Dark Ages pays even more tribute right out of the gate to the franchise's history, as the first weapon we'll see the Slayer equipped is the mighty combat shotgun. But this isn't just any old combat shotgun, no, because if we take a closer look at the weapon's codex, we'll discover that this is actually the same combat shotgun from the classic Doom title Doom 64. Continuing on, and we'll arrive at a monumental cathedral dripping with hellish lore. Inside we'll find the corrupt cultists attempting to summon/aid the demonic hordes. But it isn't that piques my interest, as our next Easter egg can be found displayed proudly upon the wall of this condemned church. Looking around, you'll find several bodies strung up, displayed as a part of this hellish ritual, although two of these bodies are hanging in a most interesting manner, hanging upside down, throat slit, arms tied together above their heads. This is a very clever Easter egg to From Software's Bloodborne, more specifically that of the Hunter's Mark, in where a body is hung upside down and drained of its blood by cutting their throats. Not only this, but the location of these bodies is also another subtle reference to Bloodborne, as we find this mark within a church in Dark Ages, and within Bloodborne's world, the faction who founded the Hunters was of course the Healing Church, an unbelievable Easter egg to one of gaming's biggest franchises. Well done, id Software. Although this isn't the only reference to another massive IP within Doom the Dark Ages, as the Slayer's new shield and the fluidity of no glory kill combat going from enemy to enemy seamlessly is actually a design reference to Leonidas from the film 300, as game director Hugo Martin explains that the Slayer's new way of fighting was directly inspired by the slow motion battle scene in where we see Leonidas fighting through Xerxes' army. Moving on, we'll be introduced to the brand new Atlan, a colossal mech which the Slayer utilizes and operates to shred through giant demons. Interestingly, the design of such mechs are a loving Easter egg and reference to Pacific Rim and also Hugo Martin's past work, because if you saw my Doom Eternal video, you'll know know that game director Hugo Martin was in fact an art designer who worked alongside Guillermo del Toro on the 2013 film Pacific Rim, and ever since joining id Software, Hugo has hidden subtle Easter eggs towards his past work on the franchise, as there is a very rare Easter egg towards Pacific Rim hidden within the original E3 presentation for Doom 2016. As we can see, branded upon the Slayer's helm during the opening cutscene is the code F-90. This just so happens to be the same code branded upon the Jaeger seen in the cover art for the 2013 film, although this sadly was later changed within the final versions of the game and all of its promotional content. Although funny enough, there is enough a reference to the same piece of cover art here within Doom the Dark Ages, because if we take a closer look at the official artwork for Dark Ages, we'll see that the Slayer's visor matches perfectly with the Jaegers from the poster art for the 2013 blockbuster. Now, throughout your onslaught within Kalim, you'll be introduced to a brand new melee weapon, the Power Gauntlet. Whilst brutal in nature, this devastating demonic mincer is actually a subtle reference to id Software's more obscure past, that being a design reference to the spiked gauntlets from id Software's published game Hexen Beyond Heretic, an FPS created within the classic Doom engine but developed by Raven. These titles were classed as medieval Doom, and seeing as years later Doom the Dark Ages would tackle the same themes, it's clear that id used Hexen as an inspiration for this new world. Another reference hidden in plain sight can be found within the expressions and reactions of whomever encounters the Slayer, as this fearful reaction is actually a subtle Easter egg referencing the 1987 action film Robo Cop, referencing the moment in where a similar scene plays out, in where the police officers terrifyingly react seeing Alex Murphy brought throughout the station for the very first time. But this isn't the only reference to the Slayer being a powerful, unyielding weapon, as we'll find in the early cutscenes of Dark Ages that the Slayer has been imprisoned, only deployed under the control of the Makers and King Novik. But as game director Hugo Martin explains, this concept of the Slayer being forced to become a weapon of gods and kings is actually a subtle reference to Weapon X, and of course, RoboCop. Our next Easter egg can be found throughout every level within Doom the Dark Ages, as if you approach these Sentinel shrines you'll find within secret areas. There hangs a Sentinel Ruby, a powerful artifact that can aid the Slayer's progression by unlocking certain upgrades. But did you know that the design of such a jewel is in fact a reference to the Amulet of Kings from the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, with both games taking place in a high fantasy world, both dealing with a hellish invasion, and of course both titles being published by Bethesda Softworks. It's clear where id Software took their inspiration from. Up next, once we've demolished all the demonic presence from the level Barrier Core, wielding our colossal mech, a cutscene will play out, in where the Slayer plants an explosive within the Titan's mouth and kicks them off the cliff. This kick is of course another Easter egg and reference to the film 300, probably the most famous kick in all cinematic history, accompanied by the immortal line, "This is Sparta." Another obscure Easter egg can be found within the level Sentinel Barracks, hidden within a secret area during the latter half of the level, where we find this beautiful painting of a man standing cliffside looking outwards towards the horizon. This stunning piece of work just so happens to be an Easter egg and reference to the famous painting Wanderer Above the Sea of Fog by Caspar David Friedrich, a breathtaking piece that has been referenced throughout all pop culture, including key art for Elden Ring. Although it seems id Software were not finished in providing us with these beautifully painted Easter eggs, because within the level Siege Part 1, we'll be escorted through a regal Sentinel hallway filled to the brim with elegant oil paintings of Sentinel warriors and kings. And it's within these portraits where our next set of Easter eggs arise, starting with this very barbaric looking warrior with a spiked globe, eye patch and formidable axe. This stoic looking warrior is actually none other than the man, the myth and legend that is id Software's own art director, Emerson Tung. Up next, we'll find a kingly looking portrait of a man sat beside two black wolves wolves. This just so happens to be id Software's senior concept and environmental artist Nathan Elmer. Moving along, we'll see a fierce yet eloquent looking female Sentinel Queen, adorned with the finest armor pieces and regalia. Although the aforementioned Queen is in fact none other than id Software's own concept artist, Olympia Sweetman. Proceed a little further and you'll be welcomed into another room, accompanied by a plethora of unique oil paintings, starting with this Sentinel Hunter holding what looks like to be the Heart of Argent. Why is he holding the Heart of Argent, you might ask? Well, it is because this man here is actually none other than id Software's lead creature artist, Alejandro Maribel. Along with many other things, this man is actually responsible for the design of the Heart of Argent. Accompanying this portrait, we'll discover yet another just opposite its location, a chiseled Sentinel warrior surrounded by a plethora of skulls and sword in hand ready for battle. Well, this Adonis of a warrior just so happens to be Ethan Evans, id Software's senior concept artist. Continuing on, we find a silver fox kingly man sat pondering upon his throne. Well, it would delight you to know that this man is actually none other than Jason Martin, id Software's lead character designer. Besides this kingly gentleman stands a towering ancient Sentinel Kingsguard, decked out with the finest of all Sentinel armory that rivals the Slayer himself. Interestingly, we've already been introduced to this man before, but not looking so eloquent, as this is a more accurate portrait of the character concept artist William Bow. Now compare this portrait with the wanted poster we found earlier. Which one is more accurate? I'll let you decide. Following this, we'll uncover a new portrait of what looks like to be a Sentinel lawkeeper, accompanied with some adorable doggos. This grand and wise figure is indeed a portrait of id Software's incredible concept artist, Colin Geller, and his two real-life dogs, Ripley and Anya. Now, I know this because this isn't the first time these puppies have been immortalized within the world of Doom, because if you have seen my Doom Eternal video, you'll know that within the opening level Hell on Earth, you'll find both Ripley and Anya plastered upon a missing pets poster. So it's an amazing feeling to see them both here once again within Dark Ages. Once you exit the hallway, you'll find a majestic portrait of King Novik. And lastly, opposite this painting, you'll find our last developer portrait, a powerful Sentinel female warrior wielding a large axe. This is in fact id Software's senior materials artist, Kat Tamburillo. Moving on, our main antagonist, Prince Azaric, is a truly dominant and harrowing figure throughout Doom the Dark Ages. But did you know that his design, more specifically his armor, is a subtle reference and Easter egg to Bram Stoker's Dracula, the 1992 classic, where we see Gary Oldman's Dracula garbed in this bright red bat armor. Now, if there's one thing Doom the Dark Ages has, it's incredible creature designs. But did you know that a lot of the inspiration that set the tone for some of these astonishing designs came from the world-renowned comic book artist Simon Bisley? As Hugo Martin mentions, the team studied his art style profusely in order to set the tone for Dark Ages medieval cybernetic demon designs. Another design reference that sparked my interest was the inspiration behind the brand new enemy formation found throughout Doom the Dark Ages, with the easier demons layered in front, then having to take out progressively harder ones to then reach the harder boss-like one at the end. This design philosophy for Dark Ages was birthed and inspired by the 1976 Atari game Breakout. Now in the early stages of the game, we'll be introduced to the Slayer's new pet dragon, Surratt, a monumental creature with incredible power and rage that rivals the Slayer himself, a fitting companion for the Slayer, I must say. Although there is a subtle Easter egg hidden within the dragon's name, as the name Surratt is cleverly named after the flower Surratula, a flower that belongs to the same family as daisies. So with that being said, Surratt is actually and heartbreakingly named after the Slayer's dead pet rabbit, Daisy. Whilst this is not solely the only Easter egg tied to Surratt, because if we confront an enemy and perform a glory kill whilst mounted upon Surratt, the dragon will pry open the enemy's mouth and force hellfire down its throat. This is of course a clever Easter egg and reference to Godzilla's finishing move, more specifically a reference to the film Godzilla 2014. This next Easter egg has to be one of Doom's more morbid finds. Traversed throughout the hellish invasion of the 6th level, Siege Part 1, and hidden within a secret area lies a harrowing Easter egg. As we can see, this disturbing painting of what looks like to be a snake-like demon eating and shredding through the flesh of another creature. Whilst uneasy to glance at, this painting is actually a reference to the real-world painting Saturn Devours His Son, a morbid creation by Francisco Goya, one of the world-famous black paintings that perfectly reflects the hellish circumstances we find ourselves in Dark Ages. Although that's not the only Easter egg we can find in this area, as we see a large statue standing fearlessly in front of this harrowing painting, positioned with one arm close to his chest and the other behind its back. Interestingly, this specific pose and stance is actually a reference and Easter egg to the hit anime and manga series Attack on Titan, a stance performed by the Scout regiments. At first glance, this might seem a little odd for id Software to place an Attack on Titan reference in front of a famous painting. Well, what if I were to tell you that these two Easter eggs here are actually connected? Because if we delve into the history of the original painting Saturn Devours His Son, the large man-like monstrosity is actually named after the Greek myth of a titan named Cronus consuming another human being, which matches perfectly with the themes and events found in both the anime and manga. So a scout standing in front of a painting of a titan now makes a lot more sense. Moving on, there's actually a very subtle Easter egg and callback to Doom's past that many players may have missed. During the opening area of Siege Part 1, you'll find a Sentinel commander rallying a group of troops. Although upon closer inspection, this Sentinel commander looks somewhat familiar, especially to all those who may have played Doom Eternal, because the resemblance is actually intentional, as this Sentinel commander is actually a reference and callback to Doom Eternal's Marauders, just pre-demonic Hell Priest takeover. Following this, a cutscene will play out in where the character Valen, in shock of the demonic hellscape before them, utters the phrase, "by the gods." This quote continues Dark Ages Roman/Greek media influences, as this famous line is an obscure reference to the many films of Steve Reeves, films like Hercules and many of his other peplum films, in where he would famously say the line, "by the gods." Although it must be noted, with the high fantasy aspects of Dark Ages world design, and being from the same publisher, this could also be a loving tribute to the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, as many of the NPCs and town guards utter the same phrase throughout your journey. Now, if there's one thing you can count on within modern Doom games having, that one thing being collectibles. Although here in Dark Ages, there's only one that calls back to Doom's past. Traversed throughout Siege Part 1 and hidden away, you'll find the toy Slayer collectible, which upon interaction, the toy will play this jingle. This is of course a reference to the classic Doom song E1M1 at Doom's Gate, composed by Bobby Prince for the original Doom title, a loving tribute to a song that shook the gaming industry. Our next Easter egg has interestingly split the community, leading the world to only guess and speculate what this could be, and I am happy today to bring you a definitive answer. Now, in order to find this hidden reference, you'll want to head towards the prison section of the 4th level Sentinel Barracks, where inside one of the jail cells you'll find a solitary skeleton posing menacingly with a blue cape adorned. Interestingly, this is actually an Easter egg and reference to Skeletor, the main antagonist from He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. Much like Doom Eternal, Hugo Martin has explained that many Sentinel planets and world designs were inspired by the classic He-Man films and cartoons. So now in Dark Ages, it makes more sense sense why we are seeing a lone skeleton wearing a blue cape who is a main antagonist in a jail cell on a Sentinel planet. As we progress, the Slayer will gain access to a formidable new weapon, the Cycler. This monstrous double-barrel plasma gun can effortlessly rip and tear through demons. However, the design of such a weapon holds a subtle nod to id Software's history. In fact, both the design and function serve as an Easter egg referencing the iconic railgun from Quake. Speaking of Quake, there's actually several locations primarily within the cosmic realms where, upon closer inspection, you'll uncover unusual otherworldly markings. If we explore even further, you'll discover an Easter egg featuring the iconic Quake game logo, engraved upon the walls and pillars of these strange lands. The first two can be found at the beginning of the level. The next can be seen branded besides a large cosmic gate. Following this, in the level Carthel marshes, one can be seen as soon as you begin swimming towards the sunken ships. And lastly, another can be seen carved upon the bow of the sunken ship. That being said, there is another Quake Easter egg hidden within the game, because once you acquire the BFC weapon and its Codex entry, you'll also find the same Quake logo branded upon the page of this devastating weapon codex. Although that's not all, as the game's codex harbors another devilish secret regarding another massive game franchise. Because if we turn to the Shield Saw codex, you'll find a sneaky reference to the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, as the codex states that the shield is made from Oblivion iron forged to cut through demonic hordes with ease. The Oblivion iron are of course referring to the comparison of Dark Ages and the Oblivion Crisis. Continuing on throughout the levels of Doom the Dark Ages, and you'll come across this before mentioned Sentinel shrines. Some hold large rubies, whilst others serve as a place for the Slayer to enhance his abilities. But did you know that the design of such a shrine takes inspiration from a very real world source, as the design of such a shrine is in fact a reference to the magnificent skeleton of Saint Pancras, which now resides in Switzerland. His name, meaning all-powerful, again is fitting, seeing as in Dark Ages we use these shrines to make ourselves stronger. Although if there's one Easter egg you've probably missed, it's the one you've unknowingly seen probably a million times, because once you have harnessed the double-barrel shotgun to dismantle demons piece by piece, a reload animation will play out several times during use, and it's here where our secret lies, as this animation is a loving tribute to the 1991 blockbuster Terminator 2 Judgment Day, with the T-150 and the Slayer sharing the exact same reload animation. Chef's kiss, id Software. Chef's kiss. The Cosmic Marshes is where we discover our next Easter egg, for beyond the absurd creatures and mind-altering terrain that surrounds us, just in the distance we can see a lone island surrounded by some trees and a strange structure. Well, it just so happens to be that this lone island is in fact an Easter egg referencing the famous painting Isle of the Dead by Arnold Buckling. Continuing our hellish adventure will lead us to the cosmic city of Raoul, an unsettling, ethereal realm, harboring secrets aplenty. Our first being a reference to a giant pop culture icon, because just beyond this starting area to the right, we'll enter a cavern, jump up and scale the wall ahead. And if you turn around behind us, we'll find a lone soul sphere equipped with an armored helm. Whilst unusual to see these two mix, this actually serves as an incredible Easter egg to the one and only Thanos, the infamous tyrant of Marvel Cinematic Universe and comic book fame. Although that's not all for pop culture references within Doom the Dark Ages, as id Software have reintroduced an establishing Easter egg first found within both Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal. To see this, simply have the Slayer die within a pool of lava, and upon his death, the Slayer will sink slowly into the lava, sticking out one thumbs up. This is of course a tremendous Easter egg referencing the 1991 action film blockbuster Terminator 2 Judgment Day. More specifically, the scene in where the T-150 sacrifices himself for humanity and before becoming completely engulfed, gestures a final thumbs up. Like I mentioned, this is indeed a reprised reference found in both 2016 and Doom Eternal, although funny enough, the same Terminator reference can also be found a second second time here in Doom the Dark Ages. As we descend deeper into the bowels of hell itself, the Forsaken Plains, hidden within a lone cavern pooling with lava, there we'll discover submerged within hellfire a lone outstretched hand reaching for the hanging chains above. The lava, the hand, the chains hanging from above the lava pool. These are all a very subtle Easter egg referencing the exact same scene from Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Ha ha ha, well played id Software, you thought I'd miss this. Following this, deeper into the level the Forsaken Plains, you'll uncover hidden away a lone corpse with his arms crossed, propped up inside of an open coffin. Not an uncommon sight in hell, you might be thinking. Well, that is until you realize that within Dark Ages, corpses are not presented in this way, and there's a reason for that, because this corpse here is actually a loving reference to the Dark Brotherhood's Night Mother, more specifically her appearance within the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. Bride of Sithis, all who wish death upon someone would pray to the Night Mother, performing the Black Sacrament. Sorry about that. So it would make sense why Lady Death can be found here in hell, although despite its seemingly mundane appearance, the object next to this cadaver only serves to strengthen the connection, a skull. Now some of you might be asking, a skull? What's so special about that? However, if you are a fan of the Elder Scrolls, you might see where I'm heading with this, as this solitary skull is actually a clever nod to the severed head of Matthew Belmont's mother, representing a pivotal moment in one of the Elder Scrolls' most insane questlines, the Dark Brotherhood questline from the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. Here we uncover the traitor Matthew Belmont's sinister plans to kill the Night Mother, an unbelievable reference that I deeply approve of. So id Software, sanguine my brother. Lastly, now I might be taking a shot in the dark with this one, as I've asked around for this last reference and couldn't really get a concrete answer, but with these other objects referencing the Dark Brotherhood, I believe this is most likely related to, as just to the right of this cadaver, you'll notice the remains of a mangled and twisted corpse, surrounded by 4 other heads and body parts. Now, I believe in conjunction with these other callbacks that this is actually another reference to the events of Oblivion's Dark Brotherhood questline. To be exact, the betrayal and fate of Lucien Lachance and the other Black Hand members you unknowingly killed throughout that questline. Next up, we'll discover a very obscure Easter egg that I can assure most people have likely missed, because like all the best kept secrets, they're always hidden in plain sight. So if you traverse to the starting area of the Forsaken Plains, you'll find a broken Atland. Beside the colossal mech, you'll find a row of armor pickup items. Whilst nothing special on its own, but if you run through these items, a unique jingle will play. This unique sound is of course the famous shave and a haircut 2 bits jingle, although it seems for some reason id Software have now changed this reference since release and have added more items to change the start of the jingle, but if you want to hear it for yourself, just remove the first 4 armor pieces and the jingle will play as intended. Following this niche jingle, we'll be thrown into the cosmic vessel gravesite known as the Temple of Lomarith, and amongst the ruin and Lovecraftian horror, we'll find an Easter egg to one of gaming's biggest franchises, as we'll discover hidden around every corner throughout this level, a corpse with a coral-like fungus growth sprouting from their face. These abominations are of course a referenced and Easter egg to the clickers from the Last of Us franchise, as the fungus-like growth matches perfectly with the iconic look of the infected clickers. Speaking of Lovecraftian horrors, entombed within the depths of the Spire of Narethul, an ancient and powerful leviathan known as the Old One can be found. A creature we'll encounter multiple times throughout the game. The design of the ancient being is obviously a one-to-one reference to that of Cthulhu, the otherworldly creature famously featured within the short story Call of Cthulhu by H.P. Lovecraft. On the topic topic of creature designs, we move on to our next reference. As you all have seen in the opening moments of Doom the Dark Ages, the classic imps of Doom have been slightly redesigned to fit this more brutal and medieval world. But did you know that the design of these imps were inspired and is a subtle reference to Eddie, the band mascot for Iron Maiden? More specifically, the album for Number of the Beast was a clear influence on the final design. The likely reasoning for this inclusion of Eddie is that game director Hugo Martin explained on record that the design of Eddie holds a special place in his heart, as whilst growing up his brother used to redraw the cover art for Number of the Beast. So it completely makes sense why we are now all these years later seeing a reference to Eddie here in Hugo's work. Although if that Easter egg wasn't hellish enough, throughout multiple levels in Doom the Dark Ages are these hell gates that pop up, flooding the arena with demonic cretins. But wait, giant hell gates? Demonic beings entering a medieval setting? This all sounds quite familiar. Well, if you're like myself in thinking you've seen this scenario play out somewhere else before, you'd be right, as these hell gates here in Dark Ages are a clear Easter egg and design reference to the Oblivion gates within the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, not only in design but in purpose as well. Our next set of Easter eggs awaits us on the level Sentinel Command Outpost, where midway into the level we'll come across a control room plastered with the remains of Sentinel researchers. Now, if you approach the switch ahead and look towards the window, this little cutscene will play out. Now, this unique encounter is a very subtle callback to Doom's past, as the event is actually a reference to Doom 3, mirroring the moment in where we are first introduced to the Pinky in Doom 3. A tremendous callback to some of Doom's more obscure moments. Following this, if we take a closer look at some of the bodies surrounding this locale, you'll find two Sentinel researchers cut to pieces with their guts and entrails sprawled out. Whilst disturbing to look at, you'll find that unlike the other Sentinel remains, their entrails are white and silvery color. Unusual at first glance until I realized that this is actually a reference to the synthetics or androids from the hit film franchise Alien. As you can see, the guts and blood match perfectly with the film's more iconic look. Moving on, some ways into our travel, we'll encounter the mighty BFC, an ancient, devastatingly powerful crossbow that demons quake at the near sight of. Now, of course, with this being Doom, the BFC is Dark Ages' BFG weapon from Doom's past. But what if I were to tell you that this weapon is already embedded within id Software's history, as the weapon design and function of the BFC is an Easter egg and homage to the 1994 game Heretic, made by Raven, but published by id Software. To be more accurate, the BFC was clearly modeled after the game's ethereal crossbow. Not only in looks, but the ammo used also mirrors that of Heretic. A brilliant shout out to id Software's legacy. Now, embedded deep within the cosmic level of Ryul, engraved within this secret area, you'll discover a strange-like sigil, ancient in concept, though strikingly familiar, as it just so happens to be that this cosmic star is a loving reference to Bloodborne, with the design of said sigil mimicking that of the Carol Eye rune. And considering both games deal with Lovecraftian horror, this reference is a perfect fit for Dark Ages. Oh, good Slayer, just go out and kill a few beasts. It's for your own good. From the hellfire to the afterlife, the Slayer is simply put too angry to die. As we enter the level Harborer of Souls, a cutscene will play out like so.
They are rage, brutal, without mercy. But you will be worse. Rip and tear until it is done.
Now, if you are unaware of the greatness shown, this opening monologue and action scene are a direct Easter egg that mirrors the opening moments of Doom 2016. Once you have dealt with the demonic ambush surrounding us, head towards the next area where we will uncover the next concealed Easter egg. Swim through the bloodied waters till you reach the surface. There you will be greeted by a plethora of demonic souls, surrounded by statues, each bearing a unique sigil. Most notably, the one on the far left is concealing a great secret, as the design of said sigil is in fact a clever reference to Dopefish, an Easter egg taken from id Software's older IP, Commander Keen. Dopefish continues to live on throughout many of id Software's later titles as Easter eggs, and it seems Dark Ages is no different, as Dopefish can be found throughout many levels in Dark Ages. Starting off after the cutscene during the intro to the level Resurrection, if we take a closer look upon the Slayer's tomb, there branded upon the side of this sentinel grave, we'll find yet another Dopefish Easter egg. Next, we'll find Dopefish participating within a demonic ritual with the cultists upon the level Siege Part 1. Following this, on the final level, Reckoning, a further 2 Dopefishes can be found within, the first of which can be found inside the opening arena, towering over all the chaos below. And our last Dopefish, you'll find concealed within the cavern, inscribed in blood on the flag hanging beside a sentinel shrine. But I don't know though, with all these sigils being placed within demonic locations and this Slayer's tomb, what if Dopefish is indeed the root of all evil? Now, our next Easter egg can only be triggered under these certain circumstances. So if you wish to see this hidden secret, follow these following steps. Traverse throughout the latter half of the level Harborer of Souls. After you've collected the red skull key, you'll be greeted by a plethora of demons within an open arena. To the far right, hidden behind a wall, you'll find a random switch. Now flip this switch, and if you backtrack, you'll see a soul sphere has suddenly appeared. Walk towards the item and you'll trigger a secret fight in where 3 cyber demons ambush you. Now, this Easter egg is actually a recurring secret, as this secret hidden detail is a clever callback to Doom Eternal, first appearing on the level Super Gore Nest. Although this isn't the only reference to Doom Eternal found in Dark Ages, as we can discover an astonishing painting of the Slayer in a gladiatorial arena amidst the rubble of the level Siege Part 2. This remarkable artwork is done by the incredibly talented Ian Nielsen, an artist you might recognize for creating this stunning piece located within the Slayer's quarters in Doom Eternal. Alas, this specific piece, however, directly references Doom Eternal, particularly the Slayer in the level Sentinel Prime. When you compare this painting to its early concepts, the reference to Eternal only strengthens, as you'll notice that the maker's faces were once sculpted into the Colosseum pits and doors, which were gradually altered to align with the design and themes of Dark Ages' more medieval world. Now, if I were to mention that you've probably encountered this next Easter egg hundreds of times while playing Doom the Dark Ages, you might find it hard to believe. However, it's no surprise that in Dark Ages you've battled numerous dreaded imp stalkers. But what if I were to tell you that their design conceals a hidden nod to Doom's history, because the monstrous scream emitted by these deadly beasts is actually a direct reference to the Arch Vials from the classic Doom games. Another enemy design that harbors a secret retro reference are the Pinky Riders. Whilst menacing and truly medieval in design, the Pinky Riders are a clear design reference and homage to He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, more specifically the legendary Battle Cats. On the topic of character designs here in Dark Ages, we'll be introduced to a few new allies, one of which being the female Sentinel Commander, Thera, a strong and merciless warrior who plays an important role throughout the game. Although many may not have realized that Thera's design is actually a subtle Easter egg and reference to the Major from Quake 3. Moving on, if we gaze into the mind-churning horizon that is Cajon Marshes, amongst the tentacles and abominations flying above us lies a giant, piercing, unblinking eye staring down upon us, a truly unsettling sight that would strike fear in the hearts of many. Although this is a clear Easter egg and reference to the iconic Eye of Sauron from the Lord of the Rings film and novel franchise. Although this isn't the only time that Doom the Dark Ages references the Lord of the Rings, because concealed within the level Reckoning, the very core of hell itself, you'll stumble across an ungodly vista filled with the giant crucified remains of these demonic titans. And it's here, to the far left of this unholy site, you'll find a lone spiked tower erect beside an erupting volcano. This is in fact a clever Easter egg and reference to Mount Doom and the Eye of Sauron within Mordor, as conceived by J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings. To further enhance this reference, dragon-like creatures can be seen soaring around the volcanic eruption, which may also be a nod to the Nazgul featured within the very same scene. Continuing our decimation of hell, you'll likely come across this large demonic sigil, either illuminating the skies or branded upon the floor of a summoning. Although interestingly, this sigil is a direct reference and Easter egg to the hit anime and manga series Full Metal Alchemist, as its appearance takes after the human transmutant glyph, though it must be said that this is actually a repeat Easter egg, as this sigil was first found hidden within Doom 2016, a clever tribute to one of anime's most beloved IPs. We next take a trip to the afterlife, a hauntingly eerie wasteland in where broken souls go to wander for eternity aimlessly lost within the void. That being said, during the latter half of the level, we'll find a secret area housing a rather rare reference, as you find just beyond a broken structure a wall filled with skulls of the damned and demonic, where upon first glance you might think, it's just a fitting set piece. But I've come to learn that this is actually a clever nod to the hit HBO show Game of Thrones. More accurately, this is actually a reference to the iconic Hall of Faces, a disturbing great hall filled with the flayed faces of the dead, featured within season 5 of the show and all of its promotional artworks. A little further into the level and a cutscene will play out that looks like this.
Payment required.
Now, whilst badass in design, did you notice all the references to Greek mythology? Because on my first watch, I didn't either. But if you pay close attention, you'll learn that this tremendous cutscene is actually a reference to the 14th century classic Inferno, the Divine Comedy by Dante, as the Slayer is seen trying to seek passage through the river Styx, and the Hell Priest that is gesturing for payment is actually a clever reference to Charon, who in Greek mythology ferries the souls of the dead. What a fitting bit of world building here from id Software. Our next Easter egg can be found during a cutscene of Prince Azaric standing aboard his warship preparing for battle. But did you know that the design of this skull-faced war vessel is actually a clever nod to Brainiac's infamous skull ship of DC Comics, as the design of said ships share a skull-faced bow accompanied by cosmic-like tendrils protruding from it. Now, this wouldn't be a Doom Easter egg video without talking about the game's official soundtrack, as yes, just like Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal, Doom the Dark Ages harbors a few Easter eggs buried within the game's soundscape, in which I will unearth for you here today. Starting with the track Ancestral Beast, mainly played throughout the level Spire of Narathal. If you listen closely, you'll hear that the track harbors a direct reference to the classic Doom track Nobody Told Me About Id. The next track, Infernal Chasm, hides a callback to Countdown to Death from Doom 2. Next up, the track Atland Battleground is in fact a sneaky reference to the main theme of Doom 64. Now, our next musical reference can be found buried within the cosmic levels, as the track Into the Void just so happens to be a reference to the track Dark Halls from the classic Doom games. Not only this, but the same reference can be heard buried within the city of Raoul's ambient track. And with that, our musical Easter eggs come to an end. But much like I did with Doom Eternal, I scrubbed through the game's audio files, and sadly, this time there are no sonogram images baked into the game's audio files. Maybe next time. Continuing on, we'll discover that the various names of each level are in fact subtle references to various pieces of media. Starting with the level From Beyond is actually a direct reference to H.P. Lovecraft's short story of the same name. The level Hellbreaker takes his name from the light RPG book of the same name, in where the protagonist is transported to the lands of infinite hells and refuses to break, fighting the demonic souls of the damned, much like the Slayer himself. The Temple of Lomarith is actually a reference to Lomar Dreamlands, again referencing H.P. Lovecraft. The Spire of Narothal is actually a clever reference to the H.P. Lovecraft character Nyarlathotep, one of the main antagonists from Cthulhu's mythos, and funny enough is actually the exact level in where we can find Cthulhu here within Dark Ages. And lastly, the city of Raoul is actually again a reference to H.P. Lovecraft's city of R'lyeh. Moving on, our last set of Easter eggs and hidden references come to us in the form of milestones or challenges that are baked into the game's UI. So without further ado, I'd like to enlighten you all on these devilish details, beginning with the milestone achievement menu. Here we'll find one titled Red Planet. Of course, this is a reference to Mars or Phobos, in which the classic Doom games take place. Next up, we find one titled Long Live the King. Of course, a reference to the Disney classic The Lion King, a line uttered by Scar upon Mufasa's death. Speaking of classic franchises, our next one is titled I Have the Power, of course a reference to the iconic line from He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. And lastly, The Only Thing They Fear, a direct reference to the incredible soundtrack for Doom Eternal, composed by the industry-shaking Mick Gordon. Moving on to the challenges, upon the final level, The Reckoning, a challenge named Thy Flesh Consumed can be found. This is a very clever reference to a pivotal chapter within Doom's history, as this fourth episode of the classic Doom games is the exact moment in where the Slayer finds his beloved pet rabbit Daisy killed by the demonic invasion of Earth. The challenge found on Abyssal Forest titled Ghostbuster is of course a reference to the 1984 hit film franchise Ghostbusters. Another niche challenge titled Nothing But Nade is actually a tribute to a very popular playstyle of the game Escape from Tarkoth. Next, on the level Forsaken Plains, you'll find a challenge named Rocket Man, referring to Elton John's song of the same name, Rocket Man. Moving on, the challenge Berserker is likely a reference to Guts from Berserk, whilst fully equipped within his Berserker armor, killing demons uncontrollably, engulfed by untamable rage, much like the Slayer is, whilst using the Berserker items. And our last Easter egg comes to us in the form of the challenge titled Rip and Tear, of course referencing the famous words of King Novik and the unbelievable soundtrack of Doom 2016. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, that was all of my Easter egg findings hidden within the entirety of Doom the Dark Ages. Though I must admit this took months of work and preparation to uncover every single hidden secret reference within the game, but let's face it, this was an absolute labor of love to create. update, and I pray that you have enjoyed and learned something new regarding our favorite Hellraiser. Now, I'm not perfect, I'm sure I may have missed something within this list, so if you discover something that I haven't, please be sure to hit me up in the comments down below. Although with an Easter egg count of 80 plus, I'm pretty sure that I have uncovered every single hidden reference within the game so far. But with the announcement of DLC coming to Dark Ages in the near future, I'm sure that there will be more to unearth when the time arises. But until then, please stand by.